Um, this is can be for kids, parents, whoever's listening. My name is Jessi Soliz Jr. My grandfather started the powwow right over there, and he used to love telling stories. He told me stories when I was little, and he told all the adult stories too. I think that's pretty much it. I guess I have one question. Who here likes cats? Does anyone like cats? You like cats? Does anyone like dogs?
Yes.
Well, I have a story about cats and dogs, and I think it's pretty unanimous that cats and dogs don't like each other, right? They don't like each other. Well, they say a long time ago that cats and dogs were best friends. They loved each other, and they say that in a big house, all the cats and dogs used to come and play together, and they play all kinds of games. Well, the dogs, they would walk into this house, and they take off their tails like coats and hang them on the wall, and that's important for later. And the cats would come in, and they'd sit down at those tables, and the cats and dogs would play games all day. Well, they say that cats are smarter than dogs, and so naturally, the cats started winning more, and they'd win all the games, and then they'd brag about it, and they'd get greedy, and they'd win more games, and they'd brag about it, and they'd win more games. And so eventually the dog said, I don't like these greedy cats. I don't like how they pick on us. And so the dogs had a secret meeting. And so these dogs, in their meeting, they said, we need to find a way to get rid of the cats. And there is cats, real sneaky cats, outside listening. And they heard everything that the dog said. And so when the dogs went to enact their plan to get rid of the cats tricked them, and they set the house on fire. And so the house, it starts burning and it starts catching on fire, and the dogs get scared, and they start running around bumping into each other. And so all the dogs run out of the house, and on their way out, they grab just random tails off the wall, and they put them on, and they just run out the door. And well, that's why they say that cats and dogs don't like each other so much. And that's also why dogs sniff each other's butts, to see what kind of tail they got on, if you got the right tail on. That's just one of the little sillier stories my grandparents would tell me. But they had a lot of good ones, a lot of stories on how animals got their colors. Kind of like this next story. From where I'm from, we have a story that's called the story of the Ganox. It's kind of a big word, Ganox. But he was a big, round creature, and he had all kinds of patterns on him, different colors of fur and different feathers. And the Ganox was a mean guy, and he'd go and he'd beat up all the native people, and he'd steal their food. And so the chief of the village, he says, well, we got to deal with this Ganox. He keeps bullying us. And he sits him down in a sweat lodge, and it's kind of like a little room, a dark room, and they got hot rocks in the middle of the room. And so the chief, he scoops up a rock, and he turns his head to the side, and he throws it back, and he says, and it goes behind his back, and he pretends to eat the rock, and the Ganox says, well, I can eat hot rocks too. And so the Ganox takes a big rock and throws it right in his mouth, and the hot rock sinks down his belly, and it's not doing anything yet. But the chief, he takes another rock, scoops it up, turns his head to the side, and goes, and that rock goes right behind his back. And eventually these rocks start piling behind his back, and eventually the rocks start piling in the Ganox's tummy. And so it starts to burn, and he's sweating, and it's getting hot, and eventually he just goes to sleep. And so the chief goes, and he looks at him, makes sure he's asleep, and he starts peeling off of the fur, and peeling off all the feathers, and he goes around to all the animals. And at this point, they say that the animals, they were blank, they were just white. Well, I think he gave the bee his colors too. And so you see that he took all them furs and them feathers, and he went to all the animals, and he wrapped them up and said, "Here's your colors." And so the black bear got the black fur, and the deer got the brown fur. But I think it's a swallow. He didn't have enough black to cover that swallow, and so his butt is still white. And that's another little, funny story. I think I got I think I got time for one more, and this one's one of my favorite ones. In my earrings here are crow feathers, blackbirds. You see them up? How many of you seen crows before? The blackbirds. Well, they say that the blackbirds, the crows, they say that they used to be all white. They were all white. And well, Coyote, he's a trickster. And everyone knows that Coyote's the trickster. And so one day, Coyote, he's watching this ceremonial fire. They must really like the stories. And so, this Coyote, he's watching this ceremonial fire, and in a ceremonial fire, you can't leave the fire. You have to watch it. And so, Coyote's sitting there watching this fire, and eventually, he has to go bathroom real bad. And he looks around, and no one's around. But he has to go bathroom real bad, and he can't leave this fire alone. And then he looks up into the sky, and he sees above him 2 white crows up in the sky. And so he looks up and he says, "Hey, crow brothers." And those crows, they look down at him, and they say, "No, Coyote's a trickster, and we don't trust him." And they kept flying in circles, and Coyote, he says, "Hey, crow brothers." And they look down, and again they ignore him. But then Coyote says, "Hey, crow brothers, I need a favor. If you do it for me, I have gifts for you." So those crows look down, and they think, they like the sound of gifts. And so they look at each other and they say, "Well, let's go see." And they swoop on down there to Coyote and his fire. And Coyote tells them, he says, "Crow brothers, I'm watching this fire, but I gotta go bathroom real bad. Can you watch it for me so I can go use the bathroom?" And the crow brothers, they wonder, they sit and they think. And he says, "I'll give you gifts." And so they say, "We'll watch your fire for you, Coyote." And so Coyote goes and scampers into the forest, and he uses the bathroom. But then he finds more things to do. And then he finds more things to do. And then he finds more things to do. And eventually this fire, it starts to go lower and lower and lower and lower. And the crows, they're sitting there hypnotized by this fire, so they can't see that it's going lower. They just see the embers popping. And so they're hypnotized watching this fire as it goes lower and lower and lower until they snap out of it. And they see that the fire's going down, and they start to freak out. And so both of these crow brothers, they jump on top of this fire, onto the hot coals, and they start jumping, and they start flapping their wings over this fire. And eventually all the soot and the coals, all the black starts to rise up into the air, and it covers them, covers their feathers, covers their bodies. And so Coyote, he comes out of the forest, scampering just like that. And he sees them dancing on this fire, flapping their wings on this fire, and they're all black. And Coyote says, "Crow brothers, I see that you have a new dance and a new color. These are my gifts to you." And so these days, the crow, he likes to jump around. His feet still burn from that fire. And now the crows are all black, covered in soot. And that's one of my favorite stories I think my grandpa ever told me. And but I think that's it. I really appreciate you guys, for staying. I appreciate you back there for listening. Stories are really important to not only Native people, but to all people. I think that it's really important that we teach these stories to the young, because it engages in creativity, imagination, and it keeps you thinking, and they can be really funny, so they get you laughing. But I thank you guys very much, and I thank you very much.